This is from Tumbleweed Master 1651. It says, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self and the youth in terms of startup entrepreneurship and dream fulfillment? Well, if I could go back to when I was 18, I'd say buy Bitcoin, but that's a different story.
If I was 18-year-old, I would say don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Don't be afraid to fail. In fact, again, we've said this before.
Yeah.
You learn a lot from failing.
Oh, yeah.
You really do. And you don't have to fail big. You can fail small and still learn a ton. But let's see what this says. Hello, everyone. I know it's not ideal to ask for advice and insights without being able to offer something back to the community. What? Really? Why?
No, go for it.
That's kind of the whole point of. I mean,
that's how we learn.
That's how we learn. But I'm 8. Maybe they don't know that. But I'm 18 and still have little experience when it comes to being a startup entrepreneur or turning a great idea into a real business. It's my dream to create something that provides value to humanity and improve people's lives. I understand this path will be much harder than I imagine, and I'll need to make significant sacrifices to achieve this dream. That's why I'm working on making my way as strong and concrete as possible so I can stay motivated and never give up no matter how challenging it gets. So far you have the right attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm trying to gather as much knowledge as I can about topics like money, AI, communication, and business, because I believe the more I learn, the better my chances of finding a gap in the market where I can start building my business. That's why I'm reaching out to you. What else should I focus on? What do I need to learn? How can I keep my belief in myself strong? In 5 months, I'll finish school and I'll need to think carefully about the next steps I should take in advancing my life. What advice would you give, etc.? It goes on like that. Okay. What mistakes did you make along your journey? Yada, yada, yada. All right. Well, so far you're on the right path. You're already on the right path because you have the right mindset for this, because so many people want to jump into business expecting to make a fortune on day one. And 3 months in, they're like, oh, this isn't working. And they give up. Right. So when you're building a business from the ground up, right, it's going to be at least 3, 4, maybe even 5 years before you really start turning profitability, right?
And it depends on the industry.
Right. But generally speaking, it's about 3 to 5 years, and then it's and then this is United States. I'm not sure about other countries, maybe over in Europe, and then it's usually about 7 years before you know if that business is going to be long term, right? I think the number is, if a business survives 7 years, it usually will go on 10, 15, 20 years. Right. But that 7-year mark is like
84% failure rate pre 5 years.
Yeah.
So 16% of businesses ever make it past the 5-year mark.
Exactly. Right. So, but like, you know, what if, so I'll go first if you don't mind. So what have I learned along the way? I mean, I've had multiple businesses in my life. I was an employee for a while before technically that's not true. Technically, my very first business, if you really want to call it a business, was when I was in high school. I started the DJ business. I was a DJ for a while. Bought the equipment, would go out and do play events and whatever, weddings and things like that, and learned a lot about customer service when it came to that, which I still use some of those ideas today in my business. So the first thing I think I learned was customer service, how to deal with customers, how to deal with people, know when you want to take care of your customers and know when your customers are taking advantage of you, right? Is a very big thing. Also, I learned a lot about planning, right? Because originally I thought, hey, I would just, throw the speakers in the car, go. That doesn't happen sometimes. Sometimes you got to drive that, and this is specific to DJing, of course. You got to drive the route beforehand. Now, this is the days before Google Maps, of course, but you got to drive the route beforehand to make sure you know where you're going, because sometimes there'll be a street, Main Street over here that's a town over, but it's only 6 blocks, and the other main street's over here, and you're going to the wrong one. You're like, well, there's no event hall here. And then you realize it's the wrong one. You don't want to do that the day of the wedding, So planning becomes a very big thing that you learn as well. Allocating your resources properly. So there's all kinds of stuff that goes into when you're running your first business that you really learn very, very quickly out of the box, because what you don't know before you run a business is you have this consumer mindset, right? Where you're used to buying things and things being done for you, but now you're the one who's doing the things that need to be done. and you've never done that before. And you have to learn how to adjust your mind from the consumer mindset to the provider mindset. And that can be a very difficult thing to do. It could take some time. And you'll take some lickings. You'll get beat up quite a bit. You'll get yelled at. You'll do things wrong. You will spend nights not sleeping because of a stupid mistake that may have cost you a couple $1,000. But you'll learn, and you'll never do it again.
Yep.
Right. And that's some of the greatest education you can get.
Yeah, I would say if I could give somebody advice, 18-year-old, yes, learn about AI, learn about all this stuff. But the three things I think are the key to being able to really get any business off the ground is you need to learn people. You need to learn communication. You need to learn to understand people. You need to learn how to lead people. That is like 1, 2, 3. If you don't have that, you're going to have a hard time regardless. Right after that, learn how to do marketing, learn how to do sales. Because if you can't market and sell whatever it is you have, it'll probably not go anywhere. And like, I don't care if you have to join an MLM to learn how to sell stuff. Just go learn it somewhere. There are a bunch of training programs. There's a bunch of stuff that you can learn. There's tons of resources online where you can learn this stuff. And then the last thing is learn money management.
Very good point. Yeah.
Right? Is just because you have $1 doesn't mean you have $1. Just because you owe $1 doesn't mean you really owe $1. Right? And understand how money really flows, because money isn't a product or a thing. Money is stuff that moves. It's almost liquid.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a bunch of stuff you can do while not having money, but you can find other ways to get it done, right? So like creative about your money management. And when things are going well, make sure you put money aside, don't spend.
Yeah.
Because for every upturn, there's a downturn. And the sooner you may not see it coming. Nobody saw the 2008 crash.
Yeah. Right.
Really, like, yes, there were people that saw it coming, but I can't tell you how many clients I had that started contracting all of their stuff at the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, that are no longer around. And part of that was when things were really good, some of them were out there buying a new car every 2 years.
Oh, I know. It's crazy,
all
right?
this stuff instead of putting that money aside. And if they would have had that money in 2009 and they would have put that into marketing, they would have saved
themselves.
They would have saved themselves, right?
All they needed was like probably 6-8 months.
Yeah.
Would have been able to save themselves. But they didn't do it.
So I would say those three things for me are probably the key things.
And money is a good point. And so you're right. People, especially people that have never been in business, a lot of times don't understand money and how it works. And they don't understand how to get money, how to get access to money and things like that. So let me give you a real quick, easy way. Okay, go ahead.
Borrow money when you don't need it. Go get a line of credit when you don't need it, because when you need it, you won't get it.
Okay, so I was agreed. Yes, the understand the difference between a line of credit and a loan. A line of credit is I have access to this money when I need the money. So $50,000 line of credit means that I don't owe anything right now, but if next week I need to get $10,000, I can just go and take it out of that account. And then I'll start paying interest on it. As opposed to a $50,000 loan means that there's $50,000 now in your bank account.
Yep.
And you're paying interest on that $50,000 every day.
And you're having to make the payments.
And you have to make the payments on it. So understand the difference between those two. I mean, a lot of 18-year-olds won't understand that, right? But here's a trick. Here's I'm not going to call it free, but here's a delayed money trick that I used. I learned this very early on in my career, but you got to be disciplined to do it properly. It has to do with credit cards. Okay. Never, ever, 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 ever pay interest on a credit card.
Nope.
Okay. Never do it. But if you do it right, you can actually get a loan from your credit card for a short period of time and not pay any interest on it. And here's how you do it. Let's say, and I advise this to anyone who's starting a business, you need a little bit of capital, not a lot. Don't go $100,000 on this, right? But if you need 10 grand and you have the line of credit on your credit card, here's how you do it. Let's say your credit card month ends on the 5th of the month, right? That's when your billing period ends. And let's just start with a balance of 0. Okay. There's nothing's owed on it. It ends on the 5th. On the 6th, 7th, or 8th, or whatever, use your credit card and buy $10,000 worth of stuff that you need for the business. Okay. Now the clock starts ticking, but guess what? You're not paying any interest yet. That billing statement will end on the 5th of the following month. So now you have 30 days of $10,000 in your pocket, basically, right? You spent $10,000. That bill won't be due for another 20 days or so. So you'll get 50 to 60 days of using $10,000 for your business that you won't pay a dime in interest on. But make sure you're capable of paying that $10,000 when the bill becomes due.
So I've taken that a step further where I have to pay a little bit of interest, where I will, I'll give you an example. We had to buy a piece of equipment. The equipment was like $13,000. And when I looked at financing it, they offered me like a 13.5 interest rate on financing. Correct. And this is back
terrifying.
But this is back when interest rates were good, right? So I calculated that I would need 6 months to pay off this piece of equipment. So what I did was I went and swiped a credit card for that piece of equipment. We made a payment on that the first 30 days, and then we rolled the balance over to a 0% APR credit card for 6 months. So we basically financed the purchase of that equipment at 0% interest or 3%.
So that's getting harder and harder to do, because what they do now is, even though you'll have 0% of promotion for 24 months or something like that, they're going to charge you 4% on the transaction.
That's why I said like it was nominal.
You're paying 4% still, which is today a great deal. But you know, but yeah, you can do so. So there are tricks, right? But if you don't understand money, you won't be able to do them.
You have to.
Everyone thinks money is what I have in my pocket or in my bank account. It's not.
Money is what you have access to.
Yeah, it's what you have access to. Exactly.
Right? If you know. And I always remember I was talking to a buddy of ours, and it was just after golf. We were sitting around talking, and he's like, once people understand how money works, he's like, it's easy to make money, because if you have access to any type of money, you can take that money and use it to make more money.
Yeah.
And he's like, the moment people understand that is when they stop living within the constraints of what they have in their pocket.
Right.
But the problem is most people, and I did this when I was young, I was working like a maniac, and I got lines of credits that as a 23-year-old, I never should have had.
Oh, I did it too. Oh my God. I had horrible credit card debt when I was younger.
I swiped and I bought the newest TV and the newest at the time DVD players and like everything. And then all of a sudden one day the job came to an end.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah. And now what do you do?
And I was like, wait a minute. Like I had already spent next 6 months worth of paychecks that were sitting on credit cards that I had planned on paying off.
Yep.
I had to take a job that paid half of what I was making before. Well, guess what? I was paying boatloads in credit card.
Yeah.
Like it ended up taking me almost a year and a half to get out of that credit card debt that was supposed to take me 3 months.
Yeah.
But it was because I didn't understand how the money worked. Now, if I would have taken $50K and I would have bought something that I could sell for $75K, that would have been a no-brainer. Now I'm borrowing money to make money.
Doesn't do you any good when it's sitting on your wall.
No.
Meaning that you bought an item and it's sitting there, or even it's just sitting in your house, to be honest.
It's funny because someone asked me the other day how much I have in my savings account. And I told them I don't have a savings account. They were like, what do you mean? And I'm like,
that money's on the street earning more money.
Yeah, that's
reinvested in my business or something like
that.
Correct.
It's either if I'm not putting it in my business, I'm putting it in the stock market, or I'm putting it into crypto. I'm putting it into something where it has a chance of earning any type of legitimate.
Yeah. You know what the savings account is? The savings account is money on an E-Trade account or something like that, where it could be liquefied very quickly.
Correct. And they were asking me like, aren't you worried about not having access to it? And I'm like, I can't tell you a single stock that I own that I can't have that cash
Apple's
in hand.
not crashing tomorrow. Ain't happening.
No. Like I can have that money in hand 3 days from today.
Yep.
Like I can't tell you of any example where I couldn't swipe a credit card for 3 days worth
Whereas
of rate
my savings
or 5 days.
account, I'm going to get 0.02% interest.
Correct. Like
Meanwhile, the bank's lending it at 8.
Yes. Like and this is where people need to start thinking about money differently is what was it? Robert Kiyosaki that said, is your home really an asset?
Yeah.
Right? Because by definition, an asset is something that makes you money.
Right.
Well, okay. So yeah, it's an asset because it's what builds most people's wealth, right? Like you're paying off a loan.
Right.
By the time it's done, you will have paid. Most people don't even do the mortgage calculation, and they don't realize that if they borrow to buy a $400,000 house, by the time the mortgage is done, they've paid $600,000 for that house.
What could you have done with that money in the market?
Right.
Right.
And they go, yeah, but now I have a $400,000 or $500,000 asset, right? Like,
well, I mean, it probably appreciated over time.
But let's say it's worth $600,000.
Yeah.
Growing,
then you paid $600
growing
for it.
30% in 30 years
Right.
is not.
But you paid $600 for it.
Correct. Like, so you really don't have an asset.
You just have a savings account.
Correct. That happens to be a house.
And whereas if you took that $600,000 and invested it over a period of time,
Yes.
what would that have garnished, right?
Correct. Like it's very interesting. And I had a guy on my the Crap No One Tells You podcast, a financial advisor. His name is Chris Nelson, and we used to get into these debates all the time. And I would tell him, like, why wouldn't I pay my mortgage off faster? Why wouldn't I make extra payment on my house? And he literally they have this software that they pull up, and he said, okay, look, here is your 30-year mortgage rate. This is your current interest rate. If you pay down an extra X number, and he was able to plug in whatever number I wanted for additional payments. And he goes, this is how much you've saved in interest payments and all that stuff. And he goes, let's say instead of putting that in there,
you put it in a market
you put it in the S&P 500.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's
which is always steadily growing.
Let's say you just took that money that you made in additional payments at the end of the time and you put it into the S&P 500. And he's like, okay, so now 30 years from now, you sell your house. You're going to get whatever dollar amount that house is worth.
Right.
In 30 years, regardless of how much you owe on it.
And let's just say you save 20 grand in interest.
Correct.
Right.
So what was interesting was that regardless of what numbers I plugged in, I was always better off taking the money and putting it into the market.
Sometimes significantly better off
than paying off my mortgage faster.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind, right? And then I realized I always say, people don't understand compounding interest. And
Einstein said it's the greatest force in the universe.
Correct. And it was one of those where I looked at it and said, I guess I don't understand compounding interest as well as I did, because I thought the savings off the house and being able to save 20 grand by paying it off 5 years earlier and then taking the extra money and putting it into the S&P at that point in time would yield me a better result. But it doesn't, because the compounding on that small amount over a long period of time is far greater than a lump sum over a shorter amount of time.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, it was just fascinating. But once again, this is where we are not taught about money. And you learn the hard way as a business owner how money really moves and what it means to have and not have money. Versus having access to money and not having access to money. Like they're two totally different things.
Exactly.
Access to money can be far better than having the money, right? Like if you have access to $44 billion, you can buy Twitter.
Right.
Right? Like,
you don't need it in your hands.
Correct.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing you learn as a business owner. Like even if you're a landscaper, you need a new piece of equipment. You don't have to have the cash in hand to go buy that piece of equipment. If you've taken care of things like your credit score and basic things, you could go finance that piece of equipment over 5 years, take the depreciation, use that piece of equipment to make you even more money. And it didn't really cost you a penny out of pocket.
Yeah, you're able to use it to earn money now.
Correct.
Better profits.
And it's those types of things that as a business owner, you need to understand that sometimes the access to the money is far more important than the money you have on hand.
Yeah. And for someone who's 18 years old trying to get out on their own, that's probably one of the most important things to learn is how money works and how to use money to your benefit. I would say one more thing on this. Don't go into a business thinking that you're always going to be the one doing whatever. If it's a service, you're going to be the one doing the service. If it's a product, you're the one building the product. You got to go into it where you're doing that initially, but your ultimate goal is to have other people doing it for you, and you're managing those people. You're out there getting the sales, you're building the brand. As soon as you're able to have other people doing that work where you continue running the business, because if you are stuck making the product or doing the service, you will never scale, you'll never grow.
Your only job at some point becomes growing the business.
Right.
Not actually
doing the business.
Doing the business,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
This is the working on or in the business.
Right.
Your goal should be to be working on the business as soon as possible.
Right.
Because the sooner you can do that, the bigger chance of you succeeding is.
Yeah.
It's the people that get stuck working in the business that hit all the bottlenecks and ultimately a lot of times end up being solopreneurs or having a couple of people and that's it.
Yep.
Because they're so busy putting up the drywall instead of hiring the drywall guy while they're out selling the next
Right,
job.
Exactly.
Right? So remember that if you have questions or comments, please drop them below and we will prioritize actually answering the questions on these videos.